Welcome to Smart 24 TV Driving Business. This is the Be Your Best show with JULIUS TOROCH, your life coach. This program is intended to enable viewers to maximize their potential, to develop spirit of excellence, to enable them to improve on their mindset and behavior, and generally to maximize and transform lives. One of the key areas that has become common with our day-to-day living is going digital. A lot of transformation is taking place in the media, a transformation in agriculture, a transformation in health. So one of the areas of being your best is in adoption of information and communication technology. To discuss this, I have none other than Engineer MUKITTE from Uganda Communication Commission. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Engineer, some people don't know much about what Uganda Communications Commission does. Can you quickly tell us about what Uganda Communications Commission is about?
Okay. Welcome to our viewers today. As JULIUS has introduced me, my name is REBBEECA, and I work with Uganda Communications Commission. Briefly about what UCC does. UCC is the regulator of ICT services in Uganda. And by ICT, we're talking about telecommunication, we're talking about broadcasting, we're talking about postal services, we're talking about internet or data services, online-related services. Yes, essentially that's what the Commission does. It's a regulator. And when you look at the Act, the Uganda Communications Act of 2013, it lists specific functions of the Commission. I won't go into a lot of detail, but the strongest of them, or the biggest of them, is to monitor, to assign, to monitor, to evaluate the quality, to take care of consumer issues that are related to provision of ICT services. That is in brief, over and above other functions.
Great. Talking about internet, do we have many people using internet in Uganda? And if so, what are some of those common services that run on internet?
Right now, I think our internet usage is at about 55% of our users who are online have an internet connection. And those are the stats as at our last, the third quarter of 2021. And people use the internet for so many services in Uganda, but I think mainly social media. People use the internet for connectivity through social media. People use the internet for information. A lot of people use the norm of asking Google for things they want to find out. People use the internet now. Some people are starting to use the internet for broadcast services. So you find most of our broadcasters have online channels. So when they can't catch a program on their broadcast channel, they catch it via the internet. People use the internet for banking. People are using the internet for school. People are using the internet for a lot of things, JULIUS. It's becoming more and more integrated in our everyday life. Even for public services, I know now people are applying for their passports online. The process is completely online, and when you're done, up to the point of payment, then you can proceed to internal affairs. So, and a lot of other services. I think even URA has an online portal right now. There's driving permits. There are a lot of services that are on the internet, and people are using those services. So,
wow. That sounds very interesting. How about in terms of radio stations? How are we performing there?
Radio stations, maybe I need to step back a bit and say that part of our work as the Commission is to set up what I would call a licensing framework for broadcasters. And right now, the Commission is in a process of transitioning from an old licensing framework to a new licensing framework that looks at infrastructure and services. So in our old licensing framework, we have over 290 radio stations countrywide. But out of those, so far, only 72 have managed to migrate to the new licensing framework. And we're still engaging with the rest and working with them to see that they also migrate to the new licensing framework and structure. So yes, we have, I could say, over 90% broadcast coverage in this country.
So what are the new requirements?
The requirements are not very different. They're really more towards improving operational efficiency of the broadcasters and to standardize their work and to standardize their work against regional and global benchmarks. And some of these requirements are administrative, some are technical, but the overriding goal is to improve the quality of broadcasting in this country. And like we've mentioned, that nowadays these services are no longer limited to our space. So when you get a station now like Smart 24 TV, in the old regime would look at it broadcasting only within the Ugandan airspace. But the moment you put Smart 24 TV online, once you open up a YouTube channel for it, once it gets onto a live feed or an application, it means that this station is now transcending our national boundaries and it's going all over the world. So in order for our broadcasters to grow and benchmark with other international broadcasters, of course not, I don't want to benchmark with stations like BBC or what, because that is really the ultimate, but we are on the journey there, and that journey starts with different levels of standardization. And that's what our new licensing framework seeks to push or nudge our broadcasters to do.
Interesting. How about in terms of TV stations and programming? Where are we?
For TV stations, we are at 60. We have, I think, over 60 television stations, which are local. Some of these are hybrid stations. Some of them are free-to-air, meaning that you just plug in your STB and you receive. Some of them are hybrid. Those which are hybrid are both on free-to-air and on pay TV channels. And then some of them are fully pay TV channels. But those are local production companies and they're generating content for TV. Because like we've talked about for FM, TV undertook this journey of transitioning when we're transitioning from analog to digital, and we separated infrastructure providers from content providers. So all the stations we now call TV stations are content providers, including Smart 24. So out of those content providers, we have some which are free to air, we have some which are hybrid, we have some which are producing for pay TV.
Are people in the rural areas able to watch TV?
Yes, they are. They are able to watch TV.
Except for the pay TV, because they only have, I think, majorly pay TVs that are in the rural areas. Do we now have free-to-air in rural areas?
Yes, in some of the, I don't know what the context of rural is, but we have coverage. We have free-to-air TV coverage countrywide. And that network, the free-to-air TV network was what can I say, structured in regions. And those broadcast regions for free-to-air are 14, and they have a nationwide coverage, which nationwide coverage is now under the provision of what we call infrastructure providers. So the infrastructure providers have their networks countrywide. And the content providers, it's now up to the content providers to decide what regions they want their content to be aired in. but the network covers the entire country.
How about issues of affordability?
Issues of affordability?
Yes, because it is not only for the equipment, because even those gadgets, when we look at people's income, they are affordable. Something can be done to reduce the regulator doing something to reduce the cost of those devices. Because I know probably not much may be done about the subscription-based for some of these other pay TV.
The issue of affordability is, I would like to use the word relativity. What is affordable? What one person calls affordable might not fall within the bracket of affordability for another person. So there's an element of relativity when we are speaking towards issues of affordability. I can't
I'm talking about
prescribe.
Rural communities.
I totally understand. I am getting there. So there are efforts being undertaken, and some of these are being done at a higher level. When you look at issues like standardization, when you create standardization and you align yourself to your neighbors and you're all using the same technology to receive the same service, then you can take advantage of economies of scale, and that brings the price of devices down. So if you look at the journey of the digital migration at the beginning, set-top boxes used to cost up to, I think, 200,000 or 300,000. But as more people get onto the free-to-air networks, you find that the cost keeps coming down, 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 up to whatever level someone thinks affordability falls. The cost keeps coming down when more people adopt the service. So our nudge, our direct influence on the issue of affordability is making sure that more people get to use these services. And that works the same model works even for the internet. When more people connect to the internet, it helps in bringing the cost of internet down, because the cost of delivering internet to your doorstep will not change in terms of the inputs that go into getting the internet to you. But if I can use an example of a bus, if you have a 60-seater bus that moves from Kampala to Entebbe every day, having one person on that bus will cost him more than having 60 people on that bus. But it has not changed the size of the bus. It has not changed the journey. It doesn't change how much the bus consumes. So the more people you get onto that bus, the cheaper it becomes for you as someone on that bus, and it makes it more affordable. Now, it's the same thing with the internet and all these services. When you get more people to adopt and use ICTs generally, you help in bringing the cost down.
You actually touch on a very important aspect, that is affordability of internet services. There has also been complaint by the public on that. So what is UCC doing to ensure that the cost of internet, comparatively, how do we compare in the region internet cost, and what are we doing to make sure more people are able to use internet to watch TV and many other things?
So just like that's a really important question, because it's at the core of the existence of the Commission to make sure that we get more people to adopt ICTs. And just like I was hinting on in the previous question, the cost of internet becomes lower when we get more people to use the internet. How do we get more people to use the internet? We get more people to use the internet when we have products and services that are relevant to them on the internet, when we have content that is relevant to them on the internet, when we increase the number of people who know how to use mobile phones and basic literacy and numeracy, or how to use the computer. So all those are interventions that go into increasing the number of people adopting ICTs and using the internet. A lot of usage for the internet is driven by content. The more relevant content there is online, the more people will be nudged or find the need or relevance to get online. I'll give an example. If, for example, you have content in different languages, local languages, other than English, for those who have limitations in English, you'll find more people get onto the internet. When you get more services, public services, like we've hinted on, the Revenue Authority, the passport services, school content, you make the internet transit from people perceiving it to be a luxury to being a necessity. Because right now, everybody who needs a passport has to get onto the internet. They have to figure out a way to get online because that's the only option they have to apply for a passport. When you look at services like farming, when you have content that is relevant to farmers, and if you can connect them to markets, to information about seasons, to the resourcefulness of the internet, then you'll get more people to get onto the internet. So our collaborations right now are to drive content production and content that is relevant to our domestic people so that they find relevance in connectivity, so that it's not considered a luxury. It becomes a necessity.
Viewers, this is the Be Your Best show on Smart 24 TV. Today we are focusing on being your best in adopting information and communication technology. With us, we are having Engineer REBBEECA MUKITTE from Uganda Communications Commission. Engineer, in the past, we used to have something called Rural Communications Development Fund. I think the name has since changed. Yeah. What is the new name and what is it doing to ensure that our viewers are able to use these technologies?
Okay. The Rural Communication Development Fund, which was the RCDF, has now transitioned and is undertaking that journey to transition further to the Uganda Communications Universal Access Fund, which is UCUSAF. And that is a fund whose goal is to extend communication to underserved areas. So you find that in the past, we were looking at it from the context of extending communications to the rural areas. But now we are transitioning from rural or only rural areas to underserved areas. That you find that there are people who are not necessarily within rural areas, but are still underserved, people who might have limitations to accessing ICTs. UCUSAF now is undertaking projects that, first of all, drive demand for ICTs, projects that extend ICTs to underserved areas, projects like underserved areas and underserved people, sorry. So you have initiatives like digital skilling for both formal and informal, digital skilling for people with disabilities, digital skilling for special interest groups for like women, people who are in the informal sector. And this is really to equip them with the basic tools or knowledge or skills to be able to navigate the internet and get value out of it, basic skills. You find that UCUSAF now is going back. Initially, we were doing a lot of work in setting up ICT laboratories in schools. These labs are now being transitioned into ICT clubs. These clubs will then tweak the students to not just have a computer, but how do I use the computer resourcefully? When we give them challenges, when we pair this with other initiatives the Commission is undertaking, you find that these students in their clubs will be able to undertake tasks to see how actual usage of the computer can transition their, should I say, school experience, learning experience, into something more interactive, something with live examples with their peers in other schools and other countries. UKUSAF is undertaking initiatives in research on how ICT can increase productivity for farming, how ICT can be integrated further into the health sector and all the other sectors. So that is UKUSAF, moving away from just rural communications to extending ICTs to more of the underserved areas and other areas of intervention.
Fantastic move.
Yeah.
Besides providing, equipping school labs and developing of ICT clubs, is there any other intervention for other communities? What are we doing in terms of digital literacy for those who are not in schools?
Okay, so that's actually very important, and I hinted on it briefly. There's been digital skilling campaigns and programs that have been for specifically targeted interventions, like the informal sector, the mechanics, people who are running salons, people who are in markets, who have market stalls. And we've been running those campaigns countrywide to see how integration of ICTs and basic ICT skilling for these people can help improve efficiency and productivity of their businesses. There's been a teacher retooling initiative, and this initiative was aimed at mainly teachers in previously perceived as rural areas. And you find that these teachers are also members of the community. So as you do teacher retooling, you're also enabling these people to be able to translate their knowledge to other members of their communities away from the school. So it's not just the students, there's a program for retooling the teachers. As you retool the teachers and teach them and you skill them in using ICT as a learning interface and also ICT as a source of content, you're helping that teacher also translate that knowledge to their next community in the neighborhood, because this teacher now becomes a champion of ICT in that community.
Great. You are still watching the Be Your Best show on Smart 24 TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue discussing these issues.